Your Majesty, the floor is yours.
Fair enough. So I posted a picture in the workshop text channel. If anybody wants to go look at that, it's an illustration I saw. Oh, I don't know, a number of months ago, that I think is a really good example of the difference between what it means to be a boss and what it means to be a leader. So the first thing I kind of want to start off with, I want to say that leadership is about more than just being in charge, which is kind of what this picture illustrates. So successful leadership is a commitment and a sacrifice, that you decide that you're going to put the needs of the group before your needs as an individual. There are no shortcuts in this process, and when you run for office in Amtgard, you are making a promise to your player base that you're going to provide a fun, fair, and engaging experience. So if you're going to do that, you need to be prepared to make that commitment and fully deliver on that promise. So that's kind of my opening notes. Uh, as far as the actual practical application of leadership, there are four things that I want to touch on, and that is actually divided into two separate categories. So the first category I'm going to talk about is coordination, which is the actual running of things. And then the second category is going to be public relations, which is dealing with people. Both of these are very, very important when it comes to leadership in Amtgard, especially because as a nonprofit organization, we are entirely fueled by volunteer support. And for anybody that has held office, you know that this is a job in and of itself. So the coordination of events and everything is super important. So on that topic, the first thing that you need to do when you begin to coordinate events is proper preparation. Uh, so I want to talk a little bit about preparation. Good leadership practices start before you have anyone to lead. So, what that means for me specifically when I think of Amtgard, I think of the people that show up early to park, the ones that are helping set up everything. The preparation H. Yes, preparation H. That's perfect. uh, anyway, good leadership practices. These are the people that show up to park early. They're the ones that are helping with the organization of everything, the ones that are setting up and making sure that everybody that shows up to park has something to show up to. Uh, something to keep in mind on this topic is, the concept of good leadership practices. Uh, people aren't going to look to you just overnight. Like there's not some magical process that happens overnight that makes you a good leader, and it's just a bunch of consistent little actions that you take that you make habits, and that's what people are going to look like. They're going to see all these little uh, habitual leadership practices, and they're going to think to themselves, oh man, that's somebody that I would be willing to follow. That's somebody that does a good job of leading. Uh, so it's not any like huge major secret, like do this one thing and everybody's going to see you as a great leader. Um, it's just all these little things like being the first person to reach out to new or inexperienced players, dedicating time to helping others improve. Uh, even so much as to admit that you don't have all the answers to anything, but committing yourself to finding the answers to everything. So like when you come to park and new players have a question and you say, you know what, that's a good question and I don't know the answer to it, but I'll help you find out. It's stuff like that that people look to and see greatness in leadership. So consistency across all these little habits is the mark of a great leader. Um, you achieve this by actively practicing all these little things that by themselves seem inconsequential, but together they add up to something great. So another really important aspect of preparation is accepting the fact that you have limitations. Uh, and I'm kind of gonna freestyle here a little bit. That's accepting limitations is the only thing I have written down because I want to really dive into this concept. And like I said, if you guys have any questions in any anything I'm talking about, please feel free to stop me and we can take questions and discuss stuff. Um, but what I mean when I say accept your limitations, uh, don't overburden yourself to the point of burnout, because a lot of people, uh, especially like the first time you take office, like you have all these grand ideas, you have all these concepts and plans that you want to see, and they're great, they're fantastic, but there's only so much that is feasible to do in a in a 6 month setting, and so when I say don't overburden yourself, like take your ideas, take the cool ideas that you want to get done, and do your best to accomplish them. But at the same time, understand that you have a real life, and that there's only so much that you can do. And if you try to take 100 concepts and try to implement them all at the same time, it's probably going to get out of hand, and none of those concepts are actually going to go off nearly as well as you want to, which can lead to burnout. Because when you see like all these cool ideas that you have not really working out, because you didn't have the time that you needed to dedicate to them, it can be kind of frustrating. And I know this from personal experience. So little bit about me for those of you that don't know me. I've been playing Amtgard for about 7 years, and I've been in office for close to 6.5 of those 7 years. Um, so I've experienced a lot of different aspects of this. I've held basically every office in the game. I've held Kingdom office now twice. This is my second time holding Kingdom office, and I have all these ideas and plans that I always want to see accomplished, but sometimes focusing on one or two ideas and making them really great is a better policy than trying to implement a whole bunch of stuff and letting stuff get out of hand. So how do we prepare for office on a practical level, is something that I want to discuss, because the topic of leadership is really conceptual, um, and I watched quite a few leadership videos leading up to this, in preparation to try to lead this class, and a lot of the things that I noticed that they talk about in all these leadership seminars and everything, it's all just conceptual, and it's all thought processes, and it's all just stuff to think about. But I like to get into the meat of stuff, like the practicality of it, and how we can actually prepare and do things, and get ready for these scenarios. Uh, so from on a practical level, regardless of what office you're running for, probably the best advice that I can give is simplify, simplify, simplify. So complex ideas are great, and I am super guilty of trying to uh, do a whole lot of complex ideas, and they can be fun. I play Warhammer 40K. It's a very complicated game, and there's a lot of nuances and minutia that I really get into. But when you're dealing with a group, even of 5 or 6 people, depending on the size of your park, whether you're Shire, whether you're Barony, or even up to Kingdom level, like the more people that you introduce, the more that complicated ideas can get twisted around and misunderstood. So the more complicated you try to make your ideas, the more you're going to kick yourself later, because not everybody understands things the same way, and not everybody has the same ability to understand as quickly as others. So something that seems really simple to you, uh, you know, even though it has a bunch of moving parts, is not necessarily going to seem simple to other people, and that's going to lead to a whole lot of explanations. And yes, Kaloon said in the chat, "Kiss, keep it simple, stupid." Yes, that is exactly what I'm saying. The more complicated that you go with it, the harder it is going to be to explain, and the harder it's going to be for people to understand. So essentially, what I'm getting at with this is to boil down your most complex ideas into their most basic components, and really nail down those basic components so they are easy to explain, easy to understand. And from there, you'll find that there is less confusion, there's less downtime, that you're not taking nearly as long to explain everything. And uh, it's going to be easier for everybody. And the thing is, like, you can have seemingly simple things uh, and stack them on top of each other and create these really easy to understand building blocks. And you can get to complicated ideas using very simple building blocks that everybody can understand. That's a good question, Yaku. Can one go too simple? So yes, I believe that you can go too simple, but it is much, much, much harder to go too simple than it is to go too complex. Really, when you boil it down, the simplest thing that we do as a game is probably ditching. Just grab a stick and go hit each other, and that is a huge appeal to a lot of our player base. Like, a lot of our player base, ditching is their favorite thing in the game. So, I do believe that you can go too simple with certain things, but it is very much that is very much the exception to the rule. Typically, simple means easy to understand, and easy to understand usually turns into everybody being on the same page. And when everybody's on the same page, that typically means that everybody's having more fun than if one person doesn't understand this concept, or this person doesn't understand that concept, and then there's confusion, there's downtime, there's explanations. And really, when it boils down to it, people just want to play. So that is a good question. So it's not something that I would really it's not something I would worry about a whole lot unless you have a player base that is very invested in complex ideas, and that I would also only say in a in a smaller group. So if you have 5 or 6 people that are really, really invested in complex ideas and everybody's on the same page, I probably wouldn't, just go straight to ditching every day. But like I said, the bigger your group, the more people that you have, the easier it is to get everybody on the same page with simplicity. Does that answer your question? All right, perfect. Does anybody else have any questions regarding preparation that they'd like me to delve into specifically?
Did you have responsibilities and that kind of stuff of each of the officers on your notes?
I don't have them written down in my notes. What exactly are you asking in pertinence to, out of curiosity?
Just in and in general, because I mean, like we've got a couple of people who are new to office, and they weren't planning on being in office. They kind of just got thrown into the mix, and maybe they would like to, know a little more about what whose job it is and what's expected of them, that kind of stuff.
Okay, yeah, I can dive into that a little bit. So I'm not sure that I've ever been regent. So I can't really speak a whole lot on that office specifically, other than just bare minimum details about what the office concludes. Okay, yeah. Thank you, Yaku. So I'll start from GMR and I'll kind of work my way up at that point. So the Guildmaster of Reeves is, as per the ROP, they are in charge of all rules calls on the battlefield. They're also in charge of making sure that games and events are fully staffed with Reeves and making sure that the Reeves are qualified to do so. They also are supposed to help the champion in regards to weapon checks and making sure everyone is playing safely. They also fill the role of being one of the 3 officers in the disciplinary position. So the monarch in collusion with the prime minister or the guildmaster of Reeves can enact a ban on somebody. So the GMR actually has a lot of uh, Kylus says the 13 Roads GMR is in charge of weapon checks. That is absolutely something that can, fall under their responsibilities. As the guy in charge of the rules, if you fill the role of Guildmaster of Reeves, you should know the rules inside and out. So, weapon safety should be something that you are very familiar with. So that I think that's a fantastic idea. But what was I saying? I lost my train of thought. I apologize. Right. Responsibilities of the GMR. So it's actually a overlooked position a lot of time. A lot of people like kind of see it as a throwaway office that they're like, oh, well, I want to be an officer, but I don't want to do a whole lot, so I'm going to run for GMR. And that's definitely not the case. Like the GMR has a lot more responsibilities than a lot of people give it credit for. And a GMR that is good at their position is going to be a huge benefit to their park, especially when it comes to like teaching people and making sure the rules are being followed. So that's kind of GMR in a nutshell. Prime Minister is also known as the Paper Monkey. They are in charge of doing all of the paperwork. They're in charge of filing attendance records. They're in charge of, at least in Tal Gore, they're in charge of funds like park funds and everything, entering awards into the orc, keeping up with all of our online database and everything. So that's a tough job, and it's often a thankless one because it's done behind the scenes. So if you are interested in GMR, or if you're currently like in the position of GMR and aren't really sure where to go, definitely reach out to people with experience in that field. Most everybody that's held the office of prime minister is well aware that it is a hefty job, and will most likely be willing to reach out and help you if you need it. But most of the work that the prime minister does goes on behind the scenes. So that's a job that's honestly really easy to get burnt out on because nobody sees the effort that you put in, even though it's an insane amount. Like I know even just tracking attendance is it can be a real pain, especially if you have more than 5 to 10 people. So prime minister is an overlooked position, and I think that it is very important. It's a very important job, and I really appreciate everybody that steps into that position. That was my second office I ever held, and I went in blind, and it was a nightmare. So yeah, shout out to Malagar. I didn't realize you were a PM, but thank you for your service. It is very important. You are doing a massive service for the game, so we appreciate you for that. Moving on to Regent. Regent is in charge of arts and sciences, fostering arts and sciences within the park, and running ANS tournaments. So that's something that I'm personally not super familiar with, so I can't speak from personal experience. But from what I've seen, the ANS culture of a park is really, really dependent on how invested the regent is. So a regent that is more invested in fostering arts and sciences is going to see a much, much higher uptick in ANS interest in their park. And ANS is one of those things that I feel like uh, for the majority of my time in Amtgard, at least, it's been kind of it's kind of been pushed to the side. Uh, I don't think it's been given the focus that a lot of people should be giving it, because when you break it down, like ANS is half of our game. The people that come in and sign in as color, work on their projects and everything. They're a huge, huge, resource for everybody. The people that are getting garb made for everybody, the people that are making cool artwork, designing scroll work for awards and everything. It's a huge, huge aspect of our game that kind of tends to get overlooked a lot of times. So anyway, to tie it back to the region, if you are invested in trying to get people involved in ANS, I think that you're going to see a lot more, you know, you're going to see a lot more out of your typical park if you have a regent that is invested in pushing people, because a lot of people just don't understand how certain things work, which is one of those things. Like, I really appreciate these workshops because I've seen so many different ANS projects that I never would have thought that I was capable of. But when I see them broken down into such easy to digest pieces, in stuff like these workshops and everything. Like, it's really cool, and it's encouraging me to try out some of these different things that I never would have thought myself able to do. Regent is also in charge of holding feast. So if you like to cook and you like to cook for big crowds, like that's a cool opportunity to serve the park or the kingdom or whatever, what have you, that you're running for. I'm not sure when my finger slipped off, but I apologize for that. They are also the stand-in for the monarch when the monarch can't be there. Uh, so they are essentially second in command of the kingdom or the park or whatever, according to our corpora. Uh, that's about all I have on Regent. Uh, as far as champion is probably the office that I'm most familiar with. Battle games are my passion in this game. So the Office of Champion is all about fostering the growth of fighters and battle gamers, making sure that all of your park days, all of your events have battle games ran, and that everybody's having fun. Uh, so Champion's the fun office, in my opinion. You get to design all these battle games, and just the look on people's faces walking off the field after playing a battle game that you designed and they had fun with. That's one of the most it's one of the most fulfilling things I've ever personally experienced. So Champion is in charge of all of that, all of the battle games, making sure that quests are running, that people are having fun as far as fighting is concerned, and all that stuff. So you know, battle games are just so much fun to plan and design. And like this is one office that I would really encourage people that want to step up but don't necessarily feel like taking on a whole lot of responsibility, or um, you know they don't want to overburden themselves. Like, Champion is a really good office to ease yourself into the concept of being an office. especially because it's really active. But at the end of the day, we have a whole lot of battle games that you can, just pull from, out of, the archives and be like, hey, we're gonna play this game that everyone knows that I don't have to plan out and everyone already knows it. So here's the plan. And then at that point, it's just your job to make sure that everybody, is aware of what you're doing. Uh, but yeah, champion's a lot of fun, and I would highly encourage anybody that is wanting to run for office and not sure where to start. That's probably a good place to start. Then there's Monarch. So Monarch is kind of the figurehead of the park or the kingdom or what have you, and there is there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes with Monarch, but the most important thing that I can say about the position is it is your job to make sure that all of the other offices are doing their job, which, depending on how coordinated your team is, can be really, really simple or really difficult. So when I look at it, like the office of Monarch, like it should be probably the most experienced player on your team. So if your other officers have questions, they can come to the Monarch and be like, "Hey, I'm not really sure how to do, fill in the blank," and then the Monarch can walk them through the process, help teach them, and just support them in their goals. Uh, they are also, the main voice when it comes to bans and suspensions, which is something that I will get to in the PR portion of this lesson. Uh, but yeah, Monarch, there's a lot of moving parts and there's a lot of processes that, similar to Prime Minister, there's a lot going on, behind the scenes that a lot of, the standard player base doesn't see. Whereas, something like Regent and Champion, they're very front and center. And, if a battle game isn't fun, it's very easy to just be like, hey, Champion, that battle game wasn't fun. But, if a reign just doesn't seem to be coming together and it's not enjoyable for some people.
I think your finger slipped off again.
At what point? Where was I at?
If the rain is not coming together.
Okay, so if the rain isn't coming together like the way that it should be, and people aren't having fun, and it's more than just a single thing that they can you know point at and be like, hey, this wasn't fun because this battle game had this rule that I didn't understand. That's kind of the Monarch's responsibility. Like I said, kind of some of those behind the scenes things that a lot of people don't necessarily see. Uh, but it is the Monarch's job to make sure that those things don't happen. It's their job to ensure that the reign does come together. All of the officers are doing their respective jobs and that they're doing them well. And also just managing the player base. There's a lot of things, that the Monarch we think of as an organization. We think of the Monarch as the guy in charge, and going back to that picture that I posted, the difference between a boss and a leader. It's much easier to lead people from the front. So as far as Monarch is concerned, getting in front of any issues and addressing them as they pop up rather than letting them fester. That's a super super important task, I think, as far as Monarch is concerned. So that's pretty much all of the responsibilities and kind of my take on the officer positions in general. Are there any questions anybody has regarding that? All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and move into the second half of my coordination notes. So the first half was preparation. The second half is going to be execution. So from a practical sense, how do we make sure that the things that we have prepared work and go well? So the first thing that I want to say in regards to this is kind of a tie-in to preparation. And ironically, it is don't be afraid to dream a little smaller. So I touched on this a little bit in the preparation section. Simplify, simplify, simplify. Uh, this bleeds into the execution section because the complexity of ideas can be overwhelming for some people, and like I mentioned earlier, like I am guilty of this myself. Like I like to come up with all these super complicated concepts because I'm like, oh, if we could do this, this would be really fun. But when you break it down, it's really, really tough to explain uh, your thought process to other people in a timely manner. Uh, so the takeaway from this is, also the more complex the thing that you're trying to design, uh, the less time that you're going to be able to put into each individual aspect of it. And 100 half-baked concepts will never surpass a single fine-tuned idea. Simple doesn't mean bad, and complex doesn't mean good. So, one of the things, like when you're planning and organizing, regardless of what it is, whether it's an A&S tournament or a battle game or even a rain idea, you've got to be able to improvise and adapt. So you will come across things, if you take office, you will come across things that you did not expect, and being able to respond and rebalance everything on the fly is a critical skill to have, and that is only going to come with practice. So I would encourage you to practice your improvisational skills as far as uh, everything is concerned, because adaptation is a very, very important aspect of this. I'm going to talk a little bit about battle games. Like I said earlier, battle games are my passion. That's probably my favorite thing to do in Amtgard is run, design, and play battle games. And the improvisation and adaptation is something that you're going to see constantly in especially large scale battle games, even if you as a player don't realize it. Um, uh, I've designed a lot of battle games. I've designed them for all sizes of field, from anywhere from 4 to a few hundred people, and every single game that I have ever ran for a group of more than 10 people, I have had to change something on the fly. Something came up that I didn't expect, that I had to change something. Uh, so a fantastic example of that was last January. We had an event. Actually, it was last February. February 2020, right before the shutdown. We had an event where the kingdom raided Seven Rivers Forge, and we had approximately 60 people show up. And as the champion at that time, it was my job to make sure that we had battle games. So I designed a battle game that I based off of the current rain theme. We were doing a Tal'Dor's Greatest Hits thing, so we were taking a different theme each month from the themes that we've seen in the past, and we just so happened to be doing a communism theme. So I took that idea and I rolled with it, and I took the concept of Seven Rivers Forge and I designed a battle game based on that, which had a very complicated battlefield that took me an hour and a half to set up. So one takeaway from that is, like I said, the more complicated everything is, the more time that it's going to take to execute. Fortunately, I got there early, So I was able to set up the battlefield before anybody was, there and ready to play. But if I had begun setting the battlefield up, like 10 minutes before everybody had started to play, there would have been a whole lot of downtime, and people would have been, thinking, "Oh man, what's going on? I'm ready to play." Why is he making something that's so complicated when we could just go out and hit each other? So, uh, anyway, this is a example of improvisation. So I got the battlefield set up. I explained it to everybody, and uh, somebody brought up a point that I'd been planning this battle game for probably 3 weeks at this point, and like I had the concepts down pat, I thought. But there was one player that brought up a concern about a certain objective that had never crossed my mind before, and I was like, "Oh, shoot, I don't know how I'm gonna deal with this." So I told them that in the process of explaining the battle game, they asked the question. I said, "Yeah, great question," and I had to come up with something on the spot, so I didn't have to spend a whole lot of downtime trying to figure out a solution, so we could just get playing. So I did. I don't remember exactly what the question was or what the specific, but there was an example of improvisation right there that uh, from the outside looking in, they shouldn't be able to tell that you're improvising. But that's a lot of what being in office is, especially something like that. In the office of champion running battle games and such. There was another instance in that game where I hadn't thought through the fact that I might not have enough Reeves to do everything that I had wanted to do, and I had to make another change to a way that there was a system of scoring. I had to make a change on that because I didn't have enough Reeves to actually track the score the way I wanted to. Uh, and that it all worked out. Like that was a fantastic event, and I'm pretty sure that everybody had a lot of fun. Which like I said earlier, is a very fulfilling thing for me to see because that's my passion in this game. And watching everybody walk off the field with smiles on their faces, the winning and the losing team both had fun, and they were both laughing about it as they walked off the field. And if I was not able to make those adaptations on the fly and bogged the game down and taken a whole lot more time, I don't know if that would have come out as successfully as it did. So yeah, improvisation and adaptation are super super critical skill to have. So another thing I want to touch on in regards to this is listen to your player feedback, but don't let it discourage you. So I said at the beginning of this class that you know put your players first. This is a promise when you take office. That you're going to have a fun, fulfilling. Listening to player feedback is super super important, uh, but also don't let it discourage you, and learn to distinguish constructive criticism from arbitrary complaints and move forward from there. Be willing to change and adapt, but also there comes a point where you've got to be able to learn the difference between somebody that is offering genuine constructive criticism and somebody that's just salty because they lost a game. uh, so don't throw away concepts because some single player was like, hey, I didn't like that. If the majority of people are having fun, your concepts are probably pretty solid, and you can keep them and fine tune them from there. But uh, if the majority of your players, if the majority of your players aren't having fun, uh, that's a bullet that you've got to bite, and maybe go back to the drawing board as far as your ideas are concerned. So after you finish an event, regardless of what it is, whether it's a battle game, whether it's a tournament, whether it's an an ANS class or anything, evaluate your process and isolate the factors that didn't work. And from there, you need to determine whether the concept is flawed or whether there's just a couple of tweaks you can make to make the process work. And you'll run all of these processes through the lens of player feedback. Does that make sense to everybody?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. Another really important aspect to consider: innovate, but don't alienate. So new ideas are great, and new ideas, without new ideas, this game would have died a long time ago. And if you have new ideas that you want to bring forward and test on the populace, absolutely do that. But at the same time, don't strictly go for new ideas that might not work and alienate your players in the process. Staples are usually staples for a reason. So if you have something new that you want to try out that you're not 100% sure whether it's going to work or not, make sure that you have a backup that most people are familiar with, that everybody's going to have fun with. So on the off chance that whatever you're doing flops, you can be like, oh, hey, that didn't work. Here, let's have fun doing this thing. So don't be afraid to try new things, but also don't try new things exclusively and prevent the people that show up and want to do the old stuff from having fun as well. All right, that actually concludes the execution portion of my notes. So this is taking a lot longer than I honestly expected it to, probably because I like to talk, but
And we've had some pretty decent questions.
yeah, we have. So, and I appreciate those because, like I said, this is all new to me. So if I'm not easy to understand, if there's concepts that I'm talking about that you would like explained further, this is the time to do it. So. All right, so I'm going to move into the public relations portion of my talk. And the first thing that I'm going to start off with is empathy. So empathy is an absolute necessity if you're going to hold office. Because as I stated at the beginning, if you are running for office, you are making a commitment to put your players first. And empathy is very important in making sure that you're always putting your players first. One thing to keep in mind if you're in office is that you have to understand that you're dealing with human beings. And as a side note, if you're not in office, also please understand that your officers are also human beings. Like there is a human element. There will always be mistakes. There will always be screw ups just because nobody is perfect. And understanding that and making sure that that's not going to be a hang up somewhere is really important in being able to deal with people, especially in a situation like this when you are in a leadership position. So keep in mind that you probably don't know all the details affecting someone's personal life. You have to be gracious even when people seem unreasonable. And I know that can be a really hard thing to do, but everyone is affected differently by different things, and things that you see as really petty can be a huge deal to someone, and vice versa. Like there could be something that's a really big deal to you that you bring it up to somebody and they seem to just brush it off. When you're in a leadership position, you don't have the luxury of being able to just brush things off. Oh no, that's the one exception. We never have to forgive the baby tyrant.
Off with his head.
Off with his head. But yeah, so like I was saying, everyone's affected differently by different things, and when you are in a leadership position, it is your job to make sure that your players are coming before you. So an example I'll give, I can't go into a whole lot of detail, just because of the way our suspension and ban system works, but I have had to deal with way more potential situations since I took the office of Monarch than I thought existed in our game. Like it has been a slew of every couple of days, sometimes daily, I'm getting hounded with complaints from players about uh, some of it's valid, and some of it, from my perspective, is like, I can't believe someone's complaining about this. But since I took office, this is a job that I took on as well, to make sure that I am doing my due diligence, because all of these complaints, regardless of how petty they look like to me personally, I know that these people wouldn't be bringing them before me if it wasn't an actual issue, to them at least. So this is where empathy is just an absolute necessity, because it is our responsibility as officers to enact our due diligence. So regardless of what the complaint was, who made it, why they made it, as an officer, it is my job to investigate and do my due diligence. So regardless of how I feel on the matter, I've got to make sure that I am considering all sides for every situation. Which is going to lead me to the next portion. Pretty good segue. And that's burnout. That burnout is a thing that it's a word that gets tossed around in office a lot because this is a volunteer position, and it is very easy to get overwhelmed and burnt out. Yeah, if anybody's not paying attention to the text chat, Kaloon just posted a very, very applicable quote in there that's really, really good, and it is definitely something that we all need to be paying attention to. But burnout is something that is very easy to do when you're in a position like this. If you if you overwhelm yourself, or if you overwork yourself, or if you just um, get tired of dealing with people. I mean, burnout is very, very easy to fall into. And so one of the things that I suggest to kind of stave off or avoid burnout is tying back to the whole, it does, like, you have to enact your due diligence regardless of how petty it seems in your eyes. You have to understand that the right call is not always the call that is going to make everybody happy. You will not please everyone. In an organization as big as ours is, there is always, always, always going to be someone that doesn't like the way that you handle the situation. And honestly, that can suck. I mean, you go through a tough situation and you handle it the best way that you can, and someone comes out of the woodwork and is like, "Oh, hey, I don't agree with how you handled that really tough situation." It's a bummer. It can really, really lead to feelings of burnout. So you just have to take into account that you are not going to please everybody, and keep your chin up in those situations. As long as you know that you are doing the best that you can do, and that the majority of your populace is happy and having fun and engaged, there's always going to be haters, and as much as it sucks, just take the lumps with the good. So another note on avoiding burnout is make sure you surround yourself with support. And when I say support, I'm talking logistical support, physical support, and emotional support. And even better if that can all come from the same people. But logistical support is really important, especially when it comes to enacting the ideas that you have, the goals and the aspirations that you have in office. Making sure that you have people that have your back and will help you plan those out, and make sure that you're executing those ideas. And you can't be everywhere at once, so logistical support is absolutely necessary. And if you try to do all these things without logistical support, and you have to run back and forth from area to area, and wish that you had 5 more hands, that is going to lead to burnout. So make sure that you surround yourself with logistical support. Physical support, whether it's moving props, moving heavy objects, that can be transportation if it needs to be, but surround yourself with people that are willing to support you in those areas as well, rather than just logistical and being there, because that is also a really important aspect of things. But probably the most important one is surround yourself with emotional support. Me personally, like, as long as I've been in this game, I have made some phenomenal friends. I have some relationships that I never would have had without this game. And there's some truly amazing people, and they give me that emotional support that I need. I know that I can go to them whenever and vent, if I need to, and they're going to be there for me. Not necessarily to agree with me, but to support me. So, support doesn't necessarily mean agreeing all the time. So, keep that in mind when you go to your support group, and you're venting and they don't immediately agree with everything that you're saying. That doesn't mean they're not supporting you. It actually means they are supporting you, and they think that you might not be going in the right direction. So just keep that in mind. Also, know when something is too much. So if you have this this grand idea that you want to see happen, and you would love to see it accomplished, and you dive into it, and the more that you dive into it, the less and less realistic it seems. You got to know when to cut your losses and walk away. So an example of that I can give, for those of you that haven't seen the announcement that I made a few days ago on the Tal'Dorei board, I have decided that the Uprising event is going to be indefinitely postponed. I've been trying to hold this event for 2 years now. It was originally planned for when I was holding the office of Kingdom Champion at the beginning of 2020. Then the shutdown happened, and I have not been able to run this event since that time. It's a huge thing for me. Like it's kind of my magnum opus, as it were, and it really it sucks for me. Like making that decision that I had to indefinitely postpone that event. It sucked, but at the same time, I understand that with not knowing whether we were going to be able to reopen or not, and not knowing if we had a 1 month was not enough time for me to reasonably get that event together, even if we did reopen. So making that call to get rid of that event, it sucks, and I'm really sad about it. But at the same time, if I would have tried to push forward and actually hold that event, it would have been too much, and it would have led to it would have led to a crappy event because we wouldn't have had enough time to properly plan it. And B, it would have led to burnout because I would have seen it be a crappy event, and it would have really, bothered me. So yeah, just be prepared to know that something is too much and be able to cut your losses. Are there any questions that anybody has regarding public relations, empathy, or burnout?
I would take that as a no.
All right. Well, that actually concludes everything that I had set up. So that actually took an hour. I'm kind of surprised. I like to talk too much.
Her voice is great to listen to, so we're not complaining.
Quit kissing up to the king.
So yeah, if anybody has any questions that they think of after the fact, feel free to reach out to me, private message me. My door is always open. I am in this position, to serve you guys. So, yeah, hit me up if you have any questions or anything, or if you just want to chat, you need some advice on anything. I'll be here whenever I can.